According to Casey Johnson, the Chicago Bulls do plan to revisit Zach LaVine trades this offseason. It's kind of unexpected considering he's coming off surgery. We're going to talk about what that could mean and how that could reshape the Chicago Bulls offseason. We're also going to look at the Chicago Bulls record and how they're trying to get to 500, but how, even if they get to 500, it doesn't really mean much improvement. We're going to talk about that, plus preview the game tonight against the Indiana Pacers, all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform that we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content. And so, first up, of course, I want to talk about this. Casey Johnson reported that the Chicago Bulls are planning on revisiting Zach LaVine trades this offseason, saying this: the Bulls will look to trade Zach again this offseason. It's hard to find a fit. That's a quote from Zach. He did say that while Zach LaVine is open to a deal, he is saying that he hasn't technically requested a deal, and he does envision a seamless transition back if he were to stay with the team, which is, again, is kind of different than what we've heard before, right? So this really comes down to this, is that the Chicago Bulls are going into the offseason with an opportunity to kind of clear the slate in a lot of ways, considering their cap situation. Now, there is still a big chance, as we all know with this front office, that they could very well run it back again, and we'll see how Bulls fans react to that if that is the case. But revisiting a Zach LaVine trade has its own risk, right? When you look at the fact that Zach LaVine, the questions around him going into the trade deadline were, how does he impact winning, his contract, and his injury concerns? Now, two of those things have been kind of strengthened in a way depending on how you look at it. He had season-ending surgery after already questioning his ability to stay healthy, albeit not a major surgery that's any kind of really risk kind of affect the way that he plays basketball on the court. So there's that. But then the impact on winning, right? And the Chicago Bulls have had, since December, the 9th best record in the NBA. Yes, that our slow start has impacted us that much. And if the Chicago Bulls do continue to win, and God forbid they do make it out that play-in tournament or something, that is going to theoretically strengthen those concerns over his impact on winning. Now, while at that time we talked about it, there's a lot of narratives around it, and I do think a lot of that narrative around Zach LaVine was there to kind of push down that trade value for teams that were hoping to kind of slide in there and get Zach for. You can't get a player making $40 million for nothing, but to kind of not have to send as many assets back. But this offseason could kind of offer the middle ground between those two. There's still going to be questions around Zach LaVine, but as we know, teams are going to have some cap space. Not really any team going to have enough cap space to absorb Zach LaVine's contract completely into their cap space. I think there's like two. But even that, if a team, when you're in the middle of the season and you have to match a $40 million contract, that means you have to send out contracts to match that $40 million. In the offseason, let's say you do have $15 million in cap space. That takes that, you can absorb $15 million worth of Zach LaVine's contract just into your cap space, and then only have to theoretically match a little over $20 million. So it can help the Bulls facilitate a trade. It really comes down to how much the Chicago Bulls truly value or truly feel like it's a need to move off Zach LaVine. Casey Johnson at one point in the season on the NBC Bulls Talk podcast said that the feeling that he got around the team while people were cordial and things like that, that it came down to that they were going to move Zach LaVine by the trade deadline, just kind of not have that story around the team. But, then things happen. He had the surgery. It is what it is there. But I think this front office, when you look at it, I talked a little bit about the cap situation yesterday, the situation that the team finds themselves in. Now the fact that Zach is open to a trade, now the fact that you had the ascension of Kobe White, I would assume was really stepped up big time for you as well. Not that those players can't be helped by Zach. Zach LaVine can absolutely help. If he locks in, he can help this team win basketball games. There's no question or doubt about that at all. But the bigger question is that with the ascension, do you feel like in moving it, if you get the right pieces back, do you better help support that team, add some depth? We know that the Bulls are right up against the luxury tax. So, in the Bulls this offseason are going to have a tough time at even adding role players to strengthen this bench, even though, in my opinion, you have Ernold Batum, you have Julian Phillips, you have some players that have shown you that they're ready to step up into larger roles, as well as Dalen Terry to see what they can give you. Breaking up that $40 million from Zach LaVine can help add, if you add like three, players based off that, right? You're adding theoretically some depth, which we all know the Chicago Bulls do need. So if you get the right players in that case, maybe there's a chance for that. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason to see how the Bulls play this between the Patrick Williams contract extension, which there are already some people questioning on if the Chicago Bulls should extend Patrick Williams. They're going to. You have the DeMar DeRozan free agency coming up, and people are guessing how much, if the Bulls do bring him back, how much are you going to bring him back at? You have Lonzo Ball potentially coming back, and if not, what are you going to do with that career-ending injury exception, right? If you decide to use that. So you have tons of questions. Andre Drummond's a free agent. You may not be able to match a contract offer that he gets if you don't move off one of your big contracts. So there's a lot of questions around this Bulls team. And hopefully it brings some clarity, and that's what it feels like the Bulls are going to try to do. Now, that's not necessarily saying they're guaranteed, and I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to react and say, we already know they're going to do. They're going to do nothing. And that's fair. They've earned that, right? This front office has earned that view of them based off what they have done. And that's just period, right? When you look at, you come in here and you sell us on getting back to winning championships, and then we kind of just meander around. So, that's the kind of thing that they have to look at and kind of focus on. But this is going to be an interesting offseason. To hear that the Chicago Bulls are back in and focus on moving Zach LaVine this offseason, it may change some things for the Chicago Bulls. It may make even the NBA draft a little bit more interesting, because maybe you want to get that done. Maybe teams want to get that done before they go into free agency so they can learn how they need to kind of fill out their roster if you do make a trade for Zach LaVine. And then you got your decision to make on your mid-level exceptions and things like that. So let me know what you guys think down below. Hearing that from K.C. Johnson, who's one of the most plugged in. He travels with the team. He's one of the best sources. Again, take everything with a grain of salt. It's not everything's going to happen one for one. But now hearing that from KC, do you feel like Zach LaVine will be moved this offseason? Or do you think they're going to listen to some offers, they're probably not going to get anything, and Zach LaVine's probably still going to be a member of the Chicago Bulls going into next season? Let me know what you guys think on all that down below. Now, with that said, one of the things that we are doing, and I said we were going to do after February, we're into March, we're a month basically away from the end of the season, and then the play-in is like a week after that. The Chicago Bulls are trying to get back. They're trying to win as many games as possible, right? The Eastern Conference play-in race is really tight. The Atlanta Hawks are 1.5 games behind the Chicago Bulls right now. Unfortunately, weren't able to create any more space there. And then you have the Indiana Pacers, who are kind of on a slide. You have the Miami Heat, who are on a 3-game losing streak. The Indiana Pacers are going through their own thing as well. And right now, the Chicago Bulls are 4.5 games back of the 8th seed, and they're 5 games back potentially of the 7th seed. Now, again, there's only 17 games left, so there's not a whole lot of time to make up that ground. But when you look at the Bulls' chances, right? A Basketball Reference gives the Bulls a 74.6% chance to finish at the 9th seed. We all know that's the most likely outcome. We have a 19.2% chance of falling to the 2 spot, which with the Atlanta Hawks still winning games, even though they lost their most recent game, winning games, if the Bulls keep sliding, the Hawks can catch up to the Bulls, where at one point that looked like that probably wasn't going to happen. Signs are pointing to the Bulls got to keep winning, right? And then you have right now, the Bulls have a 2.8% chance to clinch the 8th spot in the playoffs. So when you look at that, the teams around the Chicago Bulls all have harder schedules than the Chicago Bulls do right now. And the hope that the Bulls can get to 500 and things like that, is it a possibility? Yeah. The Bulls would have to win 10 out of 17 games, of the remaining 17 games, to get to 500. But the thing with all this is, we've talked so much about getting to 500, and I get it, and I understand why, not knocking that at all. But if you get to 500, you're probably still finishing at the 9th seed. And that's why it's important for the Chicago Bulls to really evaluate. You remember how we talked about, or I talk about a lot, saying every year that you don't improve and other teams improve around you, technically you're getting worse. The Chicago Bulls could finish 500 this season and still absolutely stay at the 9th seed, because guess what? The other teams around them gotten better. While our record theoretically would have gotten better over last season, where we went 40-42, we finished at the 9th seed there as well. So that 1-game improvement, the Bulls getting to 500, I get it. We talk about it a lot. I would love to say that the Bulls have a 500 record, but it really, in the grand scheme of things, means nothing. Because where this team is right now, yes, we've won more games than we lost since the turn of the calendar. We've done that. And that's great to see. It's great to see the ascension. All those things is not to knock the players themselves. When you have a front office that talks about competitive, that talks about wanting to win titles, that talks about even last season saying, well, we think that the fans are going to be really surprised by what we do in the offseason. You do nothing. Where this team sits right now is not in a place where, despite, it's not as bad as what some people make it per my video I dropped the other day, but it's not in a place where it's good enough to where you can go through another offseason without making some considerable changes, at least to your bench, at least add some shooting, at least add some shot blocking, right? You're not going to clear the slate. The full rebuild that some Bulls fans call for, some people around the NBA say, well, the Bulls are just destined for a full rebuild. They aren't really paying attention to who AK and Eversley are. They're not going to go full rebuild. But that does not mean that a major retooling is not needed to make this roster more formidable in your Eastern Conference. Last season, for example, the team that finished 8th, technically, ended up with had 44 wins on that season. Now, the Miami Heat had to go through the play-in tournament. Of course, we all know that to finish that way. But you have to lock in on what the needs of your roster are. And these middling signings, don't get me wrong, Torrey Craig, great role player. I love when he's healthy, what he brings to the Chicago Bulls team. Javon Carter showed more flashes here recently than what he did early, but it's not enough. And so I really hope that the Bulls don't allow, even if the Bulls do go, and that would be kind of the most Bulls-like thing to do, is that this team goes and wins 10 out of 17 games, right? Remember how much we talked about the 14-9 stretch, but this team wins 10 out of 17 games, finishes at 500, and then, we improve. We did exactly, we improved like we want to do. We're going to bring this team back. That's another reason to bet on continuity. We are over it. We are tired, and we've seen this story before, AK. Don't you dare get on the podium and try to sell us on continuity again. This team needs change. Doesn't need a full rebuild necessarily, but if you're not going to do that, it needs change. You have players that are ascending. Kobe White and Ayo. You have players that your head coach does not play at a consistent level, that you drafted here to be these pieces that are supposed to be these development pieces to help up the ceiling for the Chicago Bulls, and we have not yet seen that. We haven't seen their development prioritized either. We need to start making sense of this roster. And while this has always been a roster that has had talent on it, absolutely, it's always been a roster that kind of never truly fit together. And so, in finishing this season out strong, which I do think the Chicago Bulls can do, especially when you look at our record, it's not outside the realm of possibility to see the Chicago Bulls win way more games than what they lose on the back half of the season, right? Yes, we got Indiana, we got Clippers, and we got those are our next 2 games. But then we got Washington. Then we got Portland. Then we got Houston that right now is hobbled, right? Then, of course, we got Boston. But then we got Washington again. We got Brooklyn on the schedule. We got Atlanta on the schedule, New York. So it's winnable games on the schedule where the Bulls can theoretically finish the season extremely strong. But you can't take that for granted. And even a strong finish to the season cannot allow this front office yet again to think it's okay to just run it back. But we'll see, man. We'll see. Well, one of those first games that we got up is against the Indiana Pacers tonight, and this is going to be a difficult game for the Chicago Bulls. When you look at it, the Pacers are coming in with the number 1 offense in the entire NBA, averaging 123 points per game. They also have the best field goal shooting percentage of any team in the NBA. As a team, they shoot the ball 50.6%. Do you know how difficult it is for a team to shoot the ball 50% as a team? That's difficult. They're also the number 1 assist team in the NBA, averaging 30.7 assists. What does that mean? That this team scores, they score efficiently, and they move the ball around, which is something that has always given the Chicago Bulls defense trouble. They're also 6th in three-point percentage and the 13th in three-point attempts per game. So, again, they don't take a whole hell of a lot of threes. They take 35 a game, but they make it at an efficient rate, and that's what helps this team's offense hum. And yes, they lost Ben Mathurin. They got some injuries going on. They also have had some problems, here over the last little bit of the season since the All-Star break. They're 5-4 since that All-Star break. So this is a team that, despite their high-powered offense, they can be beaten. But the Chicago Bulls are going to have to lock in on a level defensively that we haven't seen as consistent as what we would want to see from a Chicago Bulls team. We know that the gear that this team can kick it in defensively, but you cannot waste time against this Indiana Pacers team, and we've been victim to that before. We've also been victim to last-minute amazing shots that they hit that have put them in a position to win the game. The Bulls have to be extremely locked in this game to pull out a victory defensively, because this offense, if you allow this offense to go on a run against you, much like the Dallas Mavericks, if you get out to an early deficit against this Indiana Pacers team, you're going to get your ass kicked. I hate to be blunt and sorry to curse, but you're going to get your ass kicked. And so where can the Bulls kind of find their way in to get to a win against this team? First off, rebounding wise, the Indiana Pacers are the third worst rebounding team in the entire NBA. That is where one of the Bulls' strengths when they play well. This is going to be an important part. Team rebounding is important, and not just Nikola Vucevic, not just Andre Drummond, but you're going to need to rebound the ball effectively. Offensive rebounds get you easy second chance points. Defensive rebounds get you more possessions and take that ball away from the offense. That's going to be something important to watch in this game against the Pacers, is how well the Chicago Bulls rebound the ball. That is the first thing I'm looking at. Of course, the defense overall, pick and roll defense. Come on, y'all. Vooch, I get it. It is what it is. You got to be better. The team also has to be better in pick and roll defense overall. Defense, rebounding, first two things I really want to see this team do. Now, if this team takes advantage of those limitations of the Indiana Pacers, the Pacers are a bad defensive team. The third worst defensive team in the entire NBA. They average allowing 121 points per game. They make 123 points per game. So it's only a 2-point variance there. This is a team that will give up points if you play efficiently and do not allow them to force you into turnovers. The Indiana Pacers are 9th in forced turnovers a game. They force 13 turnovers per game, and they get the 9th most steals. 7.7 steals per game does this Indiana Pacers defense get. You cannot turn the ball over against the Pacers, because with the way they get up and down the court, that turns into easy buckets for them, and that is part of the reason why their offense is so efficient. So you have to take care of the ball offensively, take the right shots, right? Don't overpass the ball, because they're going to wait in those passing lanes, and if you do that, you're going to turn the ball over. They're going to get out running for you, and we already know we saw the Bulls be completely beat in transition against the Dallas Mavericks. The Bulls cannot allow that tonight against the Pacers. What have you learned against you? You're going back out on the road. You come back home for a 3-game home streak there, but we got to take care of the basketball tonight. We have to shoot and score the ball efficiently tonight. We have to rebound the ball well tonight. The Bulls have to lock into this game. And if they don't, they're going to lose. And they're going to lose ugly. And it's going to be another bad loss in a row. If the Chicago, I don't care about the clutch statistics at this point in time. Win this game. Go out and play this game. Play the solid way that we know that you can. And Billy Bubblegum Donovan has to have this team prepared. The terrible game plans, the terrible defensive schemes, that you cannot get away with that against a team like the Indiana Pacers. And for Billy Donovan's credit, we've seen him have it come into a game with a solid enough defensive plan to where the Bulls can still win games. You're going to need that against this Pacers team. You've had a day off. You have to be locked in to win this game. And if you're not locked in, the Pacers are going to run you out the gym. And that's not even a hyperbole there. The Pacers will absolutely run the Chicago Bulls out this gym if they don't come in prepared tonight. And this team has to be prepared. They have to be locked in if they want to have a chance to win this game against the Pacers. And we know that the Bulls can do it, right? Yes, it comes down to DeMar DeRozan, Kobe White having efficient nights, but also Billy Donovan, you have to start trusting your bench more. That starts with Andre Drummond. We're not even going to get to Erno Lapatin and Julian Phillips. You have to first trust Andre Drummond more, right? Yes, there are going to be times where Andre Drummond makes those mistakes, that he does the boneheaded things, that you're going to have to take him out of games. But trust him. In a game like this, against the Indiana Pacers in that front line, you got to find a way to trust him and allow him to do the things that he can do. And if you can't, it could be a long night for the Bulls. Now, the Bulls can still have success even if that doesn't happen, but you make it easier on yourself when you do that. When you look at this Pacers team, they have 2 20-point-per-game scorers in Tyrese Halliburton and Pascal Siakam. That's kind of the focal point of the offense there, especially Tyrese Halliburton. But you cannot overlook Miles Turner as well. Naismith has killed us before. You don't want to overlook those things. Now, they don't have the Buddy Hills and things and players like that anymore that have killed the Bulls from 3 before, but this is still an extremely tough team that you do not want to overlook and allow to run you out the gym. So hopefully the Bulls are prepared for this tonight. We've seen the Bulls come into games before with great game plans, and then they really kind of surprise us at times with how well they execute. The Bulls defensively first, if they can make that stand defensively, that's what's going to keep them in this game. And then you need those performances from Kobe. You need those performances from DeMar. Vooch has to keep his big ass in the paint as well and actually play like a center in the NBA today. Throwback center. I don't care what it is. Him and Drummond abusing the front line of the Indiana Pacers is going to be important today, because Miles Turner is no joke and he's coming. Jalen Smith is no joke and he's coming. So you got to be prepared for that. So Hopefully this Bulls team understands the seriousness of the moment and understands how they have to execute, because if you come into this game lacking, the Pacers will expose your ass. And so let's hope that we're going to get to talk about a Bulls game tonight. Now, just a little bit of programming note. I will not be live for a pregame show today. Got some stuff to do with my son. He actually has a concert. But we will be live for the halftime hangout. We'll be live for the postgame show. So make sure you guys stay tuned in for that as well. And let's see this Bulls team hopefully get a victory against a division rival in the Indiana Pacers. Let's hope so. That's my time for today, though, guys. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, thanks to you guys. And like I like to end every episode on, go Bulls. Love you guys. See red if you can, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.